it is a bad thing if your unit costs are going up, but it's not a bad thing if your costs are going up. If your unit costs are staying the same or coming down, and actually what you're just doing is you're transacting more business. And as long as you're not making a loss, this is a good thing. And this is unfortunately the frustration you do often see is that there is a frustration with cloud costs going up, but there's not necessarily an understanding that actually you're making a profit on all this stuff. The business is doing well. Everybody needs to needs to spend money on cash to run their businesses. It's all about that profit and loss. It's all about that margin. And this is the trouble, fundamentally the trouble that unit economics starts to solve is that you can't draw that profit and loss line unless you know exactly what's driving that cost.
Is there a single metric unit that should every company have one? Do some of the customers you work with have more than one?
I think you should absolutely have multiple. Effectively, right, you're never going to have an entire cloud platform that is driven entirely by a single thing, a single demand driver. It's very unusual. So ultimately, if you want to use unit economics to understand, I guess from a finance perspective, right, if you want to understand unit economics from the point of view of how you make revenue, so what drives revenue? Now, if that's a single thing, then it makes sense, right? Because if you're looking to understand what it costs you to make that revenue, and therefore what your revenue gap is, or what your profit or loss margins, then that makes sense, right? If you're using unit economics to understand the profitability or not, or just the efficiency of an individual system, then it totally makes sense to have a unit economic on that system. For instance, if you know that you've got I don't know, you might have some sort of cluster that's receiving a bunch of requests and you monitor the number of requests. And because you know that the more requests, the bigger your cluster has to be, right? Now, if you know that there's a unit economic, so I've got the size of more the cost of my cluster, whatever it is, and I've got the number of requests. Now I can work then on the efficiency of that cluster because if I make certain changes, that means actually I can reduce the size of my cluster. So therefore, the cost of each transaction goes and my efficiency's gone up. That doesn't necessarily translate, for instance, into revenue or cost of goods sold or anything like that because it's part of a big chain. But it's very pertinent to things like efficiency of individual systems. So you really need a unit economic that has the boundary of the resources that support that particular demand driver.